Welcome back. Cassius Khan and Amika are a married couple who are multi-talented. They have a concert coming up, so we thought we'd introduce you to them and talk to them a little bit about their event. So let's take a look.
My passion for Indian classical music started when I was very young. I used to listen to the radio late at night, and I used to listen to Behenji. She used to play Indian classical music very early in the morning. So I used to stay up when my parents would go to bed, and I used to listen to Indian music and the classical aspect of it. And my passion just began from that. And of course, from tapping my fingers on anything that I could find, like a washing machine or some kind of a pot or a pan, or my fingers were always moving and my voice was always singing. That's how everything started for me.
My musical journey began at a very, very young age. My parents were very passionate about making sure that being born and brought up in Canada doesn't mean that you lose your roots. So we learned classical music from a very, very young age. Harmonium and tabla used to be toys in our house that we used to play around with. And so that's how I started dabbling on the harmonium, playing at mandirs and people's homes for musical nights and so on. So I never learned harmonium, it just came by just playing with different people.
I was probably maybe 5 or 6 when my dad used to have all kinds of instruments at home, a harmonium, a tabla, and I used to constantly dabble on them and play them, and pepe pepe, or ta 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 ta, and then that's how it mostly started. But it wasn't until I actually heard classical music on the radio when I was about 9 that I began to understand that, oh my God, I do want to sing. And if I do sing, then this is the kind of music that I want to sing, and these are the kinds of drums that I want to play. And so at the age of 9 is when it really began for me.
Kathak is the main thing that my mom really wanted us to learn, us meaning my brother, my sister, and myself. So my parents would save up money, and we would go and travel to India every 4 years and learn at the Bharatiya Kala Kendra in New Delhi. From dance masters there at the time, she's very particular about the family we learned from, because she herself learned from Shambhu Maharaji, and so she wanted us to learn from the same family. So I was fortunate enough to learn from Srimati Vasuti Mishra and also Ram Mohan Maharaj now, but Ram Mohan Mishra.
There was a very well-known tabla maestro who had come to, that time I was in Fiji. I lived there for 4 years in my teens. His name was Ustad Hashmat Ali Khan Sahab, and he had come to Fiji at that time to teach tabla. And one of my uncles said, why don't you go to him and show him what you know? So I did that, and he was the first person to show me how my hands in the tabla are supposed to be. He showed me different rhythm cycles, and it wasn't for a very long period, a very short period, a few weeks. But in that few weeks, my brain was like a sponge, and I was able to capture everything that he was talking about. So tabla-wise, that's the first time I received some kind of real training.
So anyways, I kept practicing and kept discovering Kathak for myself, because Kathak is a very improvisational type of dance form. It has evolved over its history. So every dancer is allowed to put a little bit of themselves into it. And that's what I've been striving to do in my own journey through Kathak. And I love it so much. It wasn't until I was in grade 9 that I really, really had that burning sensation to go and further in my Kathak learning.
The first time I was on stage is at the young age of 13. That's when everything began for me. I was picked up by a promotional agency. They had released my first album called Cassius Khan, Young Tabla Wizard, which was actually released by HMV India. And so that was the first time I received any kind of exposure. And then my promoter at the time said, well, we should take you out of the country, and I know some people. and let's do some performances for you. So at that young age, I began my very first tour where I traveled to many different countries and performed. And that is the time where I knew that this would be my profession. Well, of course, I go by the Ragani system, where we have different ragas on a palette, and you choose a raga and you put, of course, the poetry, Ghazal, they are already written by so many wonderful poets. So as a Ghazal singer, I will take the poetry and then I will add my own melodic intonation into the music, and then I will create a composition. And of course, when you're younger, you want to sing all of Mehdi Hassan, or you want to sing Jagjit Singh or Ghulam Ali's ghazals, because that's the norm. And when I was growing up, that's what I would do. But later on, as I became more proficient in music and began to understand more, I began composing my own music. But of course, not the lyrics. It's very difficult to write ghazals, especially when Urdu is not my first language. It's Hindi. So it's difficult. So I just take the poetry and add music to it.
पांच कतधा की बोल है ये 5 कतधास हाँ ता तड़कट देता तड़कट देता कतधा 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 ता देता तड़कट कतधा देता तड़कट दा कतधा 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 तड़कट दा कतधा 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 तड़कट दा कतधा कतधा
I used to tell my parents, like, I want to be a dancer. I really want to do Kathak for sure. And then degrees are very important in life, so I also did a degree in engineering. And at the same time kept Kathak as serious as I could, and now I'm very fortunate that I can do both at the same time, and I'm serious about Kathak and I'm serious about my engineering, and I can't think of myself as just doing one thing because my brain's trained to do two things all the time now, so it's kind of like that woman. If you want to be good at any sort of art form, you have to spend the hours with it, you have to spend time with it. And Indian music and Indian classical dance is very the same. Like, they require years of training, lots of struggle, tears out of frustration, and just excitement when you finally understand the smallest movement after so long. Yeah. My personal experience with classical music is that I almost didn't realize it was classical music until I became older. It was just something that we would listen to all the time, and we would listen to ghazals, you know, filmy music and everything, but it was just that familiarity that kind of happened. And Kathak is something that I've been doing ever since I was a kid, and even in the beginning, I didn't even know that I was doing Kathak. It's just something that is part of, you know, you go for soccer and you go for painting, you go for swimming, you know, and Kathak is just one of those things that I would do all the time. And then when you realize that, oh my gosh, this is Kathak, and you get to sit and watch these amazing, great masters at their art, and they simplify it for you so nicely, you realize there's so much depth in just that music, the smallest movement. There's so much history. If you think Kathak, and all these Bharatnatyam, Kuchipudi, Odissi, all these dance forms originated so many hundreds of years ago, and they're still being danced today. that has something to say about that form. There are very few art forms that have survived the test of time, and Indian classical music and dance is one of them. So it has a lot of strength, and it keeps people moving without them perhaps knowing.
Classical music helps you become closer to the divine. And classical music is good for the mind, it's good for the body, it's good for the soul. It nourishes us. Because the way that it was designed and the way that classical Indian music was created, they say it's from the goddess of music, Saraswati. And each raga or intonation of different notes in a ascending and descending scale, the notes that are chosen for each raga have certain profound effects upon our body. Another thing I would like to say is my Guruji told me, she asked me one day, she said, Beta, is music an art or is it not an art? So of course, being at a young age, I said, of course music is an art. I mean, everybody said, oh, music is a beautiful art. And she said, no, music, Beta, is not an art. Because art is something which is understood by human beings. We can understand a painting, we can understand architecture, we can understand beautiful and superfluous shapes. But animals don't understand that. But music, our vibrations, music, is actually something which is felt not only by humans but also by plant and animal life as well. If you look at the Shastras, the Pakawa's drum, when it's played, the elephant dances. And when you play the bean, the snake spreads its hood. And when it rains, the peacock spreads its wings and dances. So music has a profound effect on animal life as well. And music, of course, is all about nature. Our earth spins at an axis around the sun. So everything spins. There is a vibration which comes from the cosmos, and those vibrations come through us. And that's when I began to realize that music is not an art, it's divinity. So this is what classical music is. This is what classical Indian music does to one person.
In Hindi films, people are attracted to Umrao Jan, people are attracted to Rekha, people are attracted to Madhuri Dixit during Devdas or Aishwarya Rai during Devdas. The base of all that is Kathak, and it's been Bollywoodized for the general public and for entertainment value, fine. Because you need to spend time with Kathak a little bit more to really display it. There were some really amazing footage of Kathak dancers who were called in to do dancing for filmy music. And then film producers wanted to hire them as dancers. And they said, you know what, no, because Kathak is something so sacred that for me, it's not commercializing Kathak, it's a journey of Kathak. So they had to do what they had to do, and Bollywood and film music does what they have to do, but people will always remember those dances. And there's something, again, like you said, it's hard to exactly pinpoint what it is about it, but, you know, Helen was an amazing dancer. She did her cabaret numbers, but people will always turn the radio louder when they hear Umrao Jan songs or Pakiza songs because of that classical element.
In
It's so amazing. The history is great, the art form is great, it's meaningful, and you can look at it as complex or as simply as you like it. So in order to appreciate classical music or dance, you don't have to like know every little bit of it. You just have to have an open mind. That's all it is. Annual Mushtari Begum Festival being held at Massey Theatre on September the 28th. We are showcasing classical dance and classical music. The two classical dance forms that we are showcasing this year is Bharatanatyam and Kathak. And the extra added bonus for the audience is that they're going to be witnessing these classical dance forms to live musical accompaniment. Music and dance go hand in hand, and sometimes it's hard to make people realize this. And this is one of our mandates for our festival, is to show how dance and music is so interrelated, and the communication is so close together that you can't separate the dance and the music. And that becomes very obvious when you're seeing the two happening at the same time. And so that's our fortunate, I guess you can say we're very fortunate to have Bharatanatyam with the live music and Kathak with live music.
Mushtari Begum was a legendary artist in the islands of Fiji, and one of the few who was actually trained in Indian classical Ghazal singing, Thumri singing. And that's where I got my Ghazal and Thumri singing from, is thanks to her. Mushtari Begum won 36 trophies in the span of her career in music. She was also crowned as Malika Ghazal from the Indian High Consulate in the islands of Fiji in 1973. And she had received many different awards for her work. And she was also a Radio Fiji artist, a very well-known artist for Radio Fiji. She passed away in 2004 on the 14th of March. So it dawned upon me that yes, I do want to do a strict Indian classical music festival for the audiences in Vancouver and Canada. One of the main reasons for me of doing this is not only to give my guru a fitting tribute, but also to help those musicians who are practitioners of Indian classical music, help them have a nice platform to perform. At the same time, make sure that they have a little bit of a tidy income from the festival so that they can pay their bills. And at the same time, what we're doing is we're taking the rare art of classical Indian music and dance, and we are sharing it with the audiences of Vancouver and of our country. And one of our major mandates is no dancer can perform without live musicians. This makes it more of not only is it a challenge for most people, it's also more exclusive that way.
It has all the elements all in one stage together. And in Kathak especially, we interact a lot with the audience. I'll be speaking to the audience, addressing them, explaining to them what things to watch for, what things are highlighted in certain compositions. So every time I perform to live music with Cassius and Akhil, it's a little bit different each time because we are spontaneous and we're free, because we're not restricted to the CD at this time, 2 minutes and 25 seconds, So that makes it more fun for me as well. And I'm excited to see Bharatanatyam to live music because honestly, it's very true. It's very hard to find Bharatanatyam and live music together in Canada, especially in Vancouver.
They will be very pleasantly surprised that Indian classical music is extremely relaxing. It's also very, very entertaining, and it will really make you feel very excited at the same time, all different kinds of emotions as we are displaying different forms of emotion. So we do need patronage. We cannot allow Indian classical music to go into the gallows so that our next generation will be devoid of it. The reason why we're doing this is so that we can keep this art form alive in this country.
Judging from past experiences, I have seen people being very surprised. They don't sometimes realize how exciting Indian classical music and dance can be, how easy it is to understand it if it's presented to them properly, and how sometimes you don't need to understand it to enjoy it. A lot of our audience members are non-Indians and they don't understand the language, but at the same time they come and they compliment on the music and the feeling and the song, even though the lyrics they don't understand it, but there's always something to relate to. So I find that our audiences, sometimes they feel they know what to expect because they're exposed to Indian classical music, but the people who aren't always find themselves to be surprised from what I've heard from people, that they're excited.
The Mushtari Begum Festival is taking place on the 28th of September at the Massey Theatre at 6 p.m. And you can get tickets from the Massey Theatre website, www.masseytheatre.com. You can also go to our website, which is www.mushtaribegumfestival, which is MUSHTARIBEGUM festival.webs.com.
Cassius Khan presents Canada's premier Indian classical event, Mushtari Begum Festival of Indian classical music and dance, immersing audiences into the timeless and ancient forms of Indian classical music and dance. You are invited to experience a journey of emotions through these rare classical arts performed live. Saturday, September 28th, 2013 at the Massey Theatre. For more information, call 604-521-5050 or visit www.mustaribegumfestival.webs.com.
Hi, this is Cassius Khan and Amika Kushwaha. Join us for the second annual 2013 Mushtari Begum Festival of Indian Classical Music and Dance, taking place at the Massey Theatre at 6:30 p.m. When your ears begin to see, the eyes listen.
Wow, what an amazing and humble couple. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Zindagi. Thanks again for watching. Join us again next week on Thursdays at 10 a.m. and Sundays at 12:30 p.m. Until next time, I'm Jasmine for Zindagi. Have a great week.
Zindagi mein to sabhi, Zindagi mein to sabhi pyar kiya करते हैं जिंदगी में तो सभी प्यार किया करते हैं मैं तो मर कर भी मेरे जान तुझे चाहूँगा सभी प्यार किया करते हैं।
The broadcast of this program has been made possible by Shaw.